y'all. Hey. I hope all is well. We on the laptop today, y'all, because tablet wasn't feeling it. Okay. Tablet wasn't feeling it. I hope this isn't too loud. Let me turn this down a little bit. I hope all is well. I'm going live also on Instagram now. So we should be good. And yeah, we're getting everything up and running today. I'm gonna bring this down. It's weird being on my laptop, y'all. So weird. But I'm glad we was able to still go live. Here we are. Okay. Many blessings to you all. I hope everything is going well today. Happy Monday. Tonight, we are talking about building self-worth, which was heavily voted on. Thank you to everybody who voted on the live or the post for this week's live. So what I have tonight is I have just a few things to remember about building self-worth, but then also have about 3 tips that you can take away today on how to build self-worth. And then I have a few affirmations at the end. So feel free to utilize all the information that I give you today based off of your needs and what your desires are as far as getting away from this live. But also let me know in the comments, ask questions. If you need me to follow up anything, need me to repeat anything, please let me know as well. Just let me know in the comments. If this is your first time, my name is Debbie. I'm a certified mindfulness coach, discussing all things self-care, mindfulness, mental health, all of that jazz. So this channel has a live every week on Mondays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then I post meditations weekly to help with your mindfulness needs. But self-worth, that's what we're talking about today. And I'm excited to dive in. If you're watching, make sure to like the live, share the live with anybody that you think that could benefit from this. And we'll dive in, y'all. We will dive in. Let me pull up my notes here. So a few things that I want us to understand and remember about building our self-worth, right? One, understanding that self-worth is not a gift, but a birthright, right? Because we are here, because we're humans, because we are born, we all have worth. We all have a sense of worth. Where there is life, there's hope. So that means where there is life, there is worth, right? So understanding first that self-worth isn't, a gift. It isn't given to you. It's not based off of what others think about you. It's a birthright. It's something that you already possess, right? The second thing I want you to understand and remember about self-worth is that your self-worth is measured by God and your internal experience, if you believe in God, right? But measured by God and your internal experience, rather than the experience or how other people experience you or how other people treat you or what other people think about you, right? A lot of times we measure our self-worth based off of the external needs of others, versus thinking about where our worth really comes from, which is our internal experience. And if you believe in God, it comes from God. Even if you don't believe in God, it does come from God. But anywho, we won't get into that. So that was number 2, something that you want to understand about self-worth and how it's measured. Number 3, and this is key when it comes to self-worth. It's to prioritize and understand your internal experience rather than dismissing your internal experience, okay? Your self-worth, I'll say it again, the key to self-worth is understanding and prioritizing your internal experience rather than dismissing it, okay? So when it comes to thinking about self-worth, you want to make sure that you are prioritizing your internal experience. Happy Monday, welcome in. You're prioritizing your internal experience and not prioritizing the experience of others or what you perceive those experiences to be. Because a lot of times our self-worth is based off of our own perceptions versus the reality or truth. So yeah, those are the three things that I want you to understand before we even have or dive into the conversation of self-worth. Understanding that it's about prioritizing and understanding your internal experience, understanding where self-worth is measured. It's measured off of that internal experience. If you believe in God, it's measured from God. But then also understanding your self-worth is not a gift, but a birthright. Okay. So those are the top three things. Now, to kind of dive into what you can do to build self-worth, let me just pull this up here. Everything is so weird with me being on my laptop, y'all. I don't know why it's not. Okay. All right. So here we go. How can we build our self-worth? Three things you want to keep in mind when building self-worth. Gain an understanding of where your image of self-worth comes from. And what are those common criticisms that you continuously give to yourself? We all have an image or a depiction of who we are and what our self-worth is, right? We all think about consistently on a day-to-day basis our worth and the overview or that picture or that image or that story that we tell ourselves of who we are, right? Where are we basing that information from? That's what we want to get down to. And a lot of the things that I'm going to ask, you can definitely write down. These are great journaling questions if you are struggling in this area or in this space. But you want to really dig into and gain an understanding of where your image of self-worth comes from. Is it coming from your conditioning as a child? Is it coming from your unprocessed past trauma or experiences? Is it coming from your personal values or culture? Is it coming from compliments and comparisons to others? Is it coming from your own image or idea of success and productivity? Or is it coming from the quality of the relationships that you have, right? How others are treating you? Is that how you're basing your self-worth? So really taking a moment to journal how you're really basing this information and where you're getting that information from. This can be difficult to explore. So by all means, you can explore it on your own, or if you feel the need to explore it with a therapist, do that. But taking a moment to really understand that is crucial to building self-worth, right? Especially if you already know and understand that your self-worth may be low, right? So that's number one, gain an understanding of where your image of self-worth comes from. Number two, shift from self-criticism to self-compassion. Okay. So notice how you speak to yourself. All right. Understanding, how you speak to yourself, the things that you say to yourself, and then understanding the difference between negative self-talk and accountability. Sometimes we confuse the two. And having a negative sense of who you are or your self-worth many times can come from the confusion of negative self-talk versus accountability. Okay. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about where you're getting the idea of I am worthy of this or I deserve this. Really think about where those ideas are coming from and where you're confusing negative self-talk and accountability. So a few questions you can ask yourself. What do you often tell yourself that you are capable of or not capable of doing? What do you often tell yourself you're capable of or not capable of doing? And is that true or is it a perceived limitation? Is it true or is it a perceived limitation? Right? Because sometimes some things that we may say about ourselves as far as our capabilities may be true. Sometimes it just may be a perceived limitation. Sometimes it may just be lack of knowledge, not necessarily a capability, or not a capability. So really take the time to think about what are the things that I tell myself I can't do. What are the things I tell myself I can do? Is it true or is it perceived? And if it is true, is it something I can actively change? Right? I know there's a lot of questions, but what do you often tell yourself you're capable of and not capable of doing? Is it true or is it a perceived limitation? And if it is true, is it something I can actively change? Right? And based off of how you answer those questions can determine what happens next. Right? If it's something that you have told yourself that you cannot do, and you find that it's true, then what level of acceptance do you have to process with those things, right? So it says, and if it's true, is it something that you can actively change, right? If it's true, can I change it? If not, then what level of acceptance do I have to practice, right? So that was the first question. The second question is, what story do I tell myself about who I am? What story do I tell myself about who I am, right? Who are you? What do you tell yourself when you think about that question? Write it out. The good, the bad, the ugly, right? And again, are those things true or are those things a perceived limitation? Okay. Another question you can ask yourself is, what do you assume others feel about you or think about you? What do you assume others think or feel about you? Right? A lot of times our self-worth is based off of, again, our perceptions of what others think about us, what others tell us, or what we may be guessing they think about us, right? So think about that. What do you assume others think or feel about you? Because many times those thoughts that we have, we then turn around and put them on ourselves. And that may not even be the case, right? That may not even be what people are thinking. And even if they are thinking that, right? If you find, or even if you don't find, but even if people are thinking that way, what does that really mean? What does that really mean about your own thoughts about yourself, actions, and your behaviors, right? So really thinking through the assumptions that we make, and getting an understanding of that. And if you want to go as far as, like we were talking about before, is it true or is it a perceived limitation? You can take it there too. But really, I just want us to understand what we assume others think and how we project that on ourselves. Okay. And then there's one last question here. Here we go. So the last question here then is, what promises have you made to yourself but continue to break? What promises have you made to yourself but continue to break? Many times our self-worth, or building our self-worth is difficult because we make continued promises to ourselves for whatever reason, whether it be goals that we want to meet, things that we tell ourselves that we're going to do to better ourselves, whether it be certain self-help things, or it could be something as simple as, I'm going to, get up and read every day or something like that. And then we don't keep those promises. When we live a life full of promises that we would make to ourselves that we continue to break, that begins to diminish our own feelings of self-worth, because we end up not being able to trust ourselves. Hello, welcome in, welcome in. So we begin to not trust ourselves. So thinking about what promises you have made to yourself but continue to break is not a way for you to beat yourself up about it, right? It's just a matter of awareness. and really taking the time to understand these things, to not just adjust, but to bring awareness of your image or your depiction of self-worth. Sometimes because we have a low self-esteem or a low image of ourselves, that's why the promises are being broken. We self-sabotage, we find ways to show ourselves daily that we're not deserving, just because that's maybe what we internally feel. And so we self sabotage and make those things a thing, right? So the more awareness that we have, the more that we're able to really take the time to think through these things, the better off we will be, right? So that was the last question in that section. So that was shifting our self-criticism to self-compassion. What do you often tell yourself that you're capable of and not capable of? And is it true or a perceived limitation? And if it is true, is it something that can actively change, right? The other one was, what story do I tell myself about who I am? And the next one was, what do you assume others think or feel about you? And then what promises have you made to yourself but continue to break? Okay, so when we're thinking about all of those things, it brings us to the last point, which is actively set boundaries for yourself and a new standard for how you treat yourself based solely on your personal values. Actively set boundaries for yourself and a new standard for how you treat yourself based solely on your personal values. Okay. So, really taking the time to understand that you're just back to the top of the call, which is basically your self-worth is not based on the internal experience of others, how others treat you, how others speak to you, what others do to you. There are their actions, thoughts, and behaviors. Your self-worth is built off of your own personal internal experience of yourself, right? So it's based off of how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, right? And we went through how that may be um, skewed based off of our own personal experiences, but that's what it's built off of. And I also mentioned too, within myself, for me, myself personally, my worth is based off of what God says about me, not even what I think about me sometimes, right? Not everybody believes in that, but I do, right? So when it comes to setting boundaries and setting a new standard, when you're at that point where you have actively figured out how and understand how you see yourself and how you picture yourself, when you have actively shifted your self-criticism to self-compassion and found some more understanding and awareness of what you tell yourself and how you speak to yourself, now you can take that information and set boundaries and set a new standard, right? Based off of your personal values. How do I want to show up in the world? Right? That's a question that you can ask yourself. How do I want to show up in the world? And based off of how I want to show up, what are my values? What are the things that I value about me? What are the things that I value about life? What are the things that I want out of life? Right? Those, and if it's something that you're not quite sure of or don't understand or don't know the answer to, that's okay. Start somewhere, you know. Again, like I said and mentioned as well, is that this is definitely something that you can work through with a therapist. If you're having a hard time, journaling and finding these answers for yourself, which is a common human experience. Sometimes we don't even think about these questions. And so the thought of actually trying to process this all alone can be daunting, right? So if you feel like you need the assistance of a therapist, please do. Please do that. If it's tough to think through on your own, I can understand that. But how do you want to show up in the world? What goals do you have? What purpose do you have, right? We all have a purpose. We all have worth. Like I said, worth is a birthright, not a gift. And so they're taking some time to really explore what those things are, will give you a better sense of who you are And once you have a better sense of who you are, then how your behaviors, how your actions, and how your emotions um, partner with that is crucial on building self-worth, right? Once you have a better understanding of value, of your personal values, and not your personal value. We already know that you have worth, right? You already know that you have value. We're talking about what your personal values are. So I value honesty. I living a live I value living a life or an honest life, right? People may not value that. I value that, right? I value living a life that's connected to God, right? So, based off of my values will be centered around that, right? So, it's not even about my own worth or how much do I cost, right? It's more so of what do you value and listing those. And then that's how I make my decisions. That's how I operate and go through life. That's how I move through this life's journey. If I know that I value honesty, if I know that I value compassion and empathy, if I know that I value family, if I know that I value all of these things, and that's something that I get down on the inside of my heart, like this is who I am and this is what I value, then now I can start moving based off of that, right? And the more that we start moving based off of our own values, that then begins to build our self-worth. Sometimes we are having a hard time with our self-worth because our actions and our values conflict, right? So we may be doing something that we know for a fact conflicts with our personal values, but we do it for whatever reason. And because we live a life of conflicting values and actions, our self-worth is diminished, our confidence is diminished because we're doing things that don't align with who we are as a person, right? And that's in relationships, in our career, in our friendships, in our family. Like it goes hand in hand. So taking the time to know, how do I want to show up in the world and how does that relate to my values, is key to understanding and building self-worth, right? So how do I want to show up in the world? Number 2 was in this section was, how can I reframe my negative internal experience of myself? How can I reframe my negative internal experience of me? Okay. So, again, our self worth is based off of our own internal experience. And if our own internal experience of who we are is negative, then that's why our self worth may be lower, right? So, finding ways to reframe our negative internal experience is important. Again, this may need the help of a therapist. This may take some time to work through, but taking a moment to reframe how we see ourselves, reframe the story we tell us about us, right? Because a lot of times our negative self-talk is based off of that negative internal experience and that negative story we tell ourselves, right? Our negative story, for example, may be, and this can be, I'm not gonna go deep. So this is just something that's maybe on the surface, but a negative internal experience may be, I'm always late, right? Very high, very surfacey, but I want to just give an example. I'm always late. I'm a late person. This is just me. This will always be me. Blah, 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 right? That's a negative internal experience. And it may even be an assumption. And we say, I'm always, think of the things that you say, that I'm always this, or I'm always that, or I always do this, or this is just who I am. Or may I say it, but us relating our actions to zodiac signs. And that's how we're making our decisions. Like, oh, I'm a Capricorn, so this is why I do things this way, right? So thinking about how you want to show up in the world, but also those negative internal experiences that you tell yourself day in and day out, and finding ways to reframe them. What do I mean by reframing? So instead of me telling myself I'm always late, Reframing would be, at times I'm late because of such and such situations, but I have a chance to be better or to do better, right? Now, this is again, a very surfacey idea, right? But thinking about how you can reframe the story and the narrative that you tell yourself every day is crucial and important. Another one may be, I'm not smart. I've never been good at such and such, or I've never been good at this, or I'm not able to do this, right? Those things that you say, I'm not able, I can't. Think about those things that you tell yourself and journal them, right? If you say it more than once in a day, that's a common negative. That's a common negative thought. Now, I also said earlier, you also want to know and understand the difference between negative self-talk and accountability, right? There are some instances where these thoughts may be going into your head and it's something that you can actively change. You want to walk that fine line of accountability as I need to do better versus I suck or I'm horrible. You know what I mean? So thinking about that negative self-talk versus accountability, what that fine line looks like for you, and really, really understanding, journaling, thinking it through, but most of all, thinking how you're able to reframe. How can I change this up? How can I reframe this statement about myself to where it's not negative, but productive, right? Because there are some things that we have as far as accountability that we have to hold ourselves to. There's a standard that we want to hold ourselves to. There is situations and things that we want to be better at, not dismissing that. And then also too, even thinking about the experience of others to an extent is important, but it's not a measure of your worth, right? How other people experience us is something that we want to keep in mind, but it's not a matter of self-worth. And that's where accountability comes into. Like if I'm a jerk to people, right, that may be accountability thought. Like, okay, you know what? I am a jerk. I'm a jerk, and I could be better. There's a difference between accountability of that to saying I'm a horrible, terrible person, and I'm always going to be a horrible, terrible person, right? There's a difference between, hey, I'm a jerk, I could do better, to I'm a horrible, terrible person, and you hearing that over and over and over again in your head. So learning the fine line, learning the difference between accountability and negative self-talk. It looks different, even though it may show up at the same time, right? The accountability may show up and then it spirals into negative self-talk, right? It's okay to have the accountability, but allowing it to stay and replay and spiral is where you want to stop, it. Okay. That was a mouthful, but I hope that hit home. I hope y'all got that, because I think that's where a lot of people run into the confusion of self-esteem or self-worth. They allow it to spiral. What was that? That was number 2 in that section. And then lastly, number 3 in that section is, how can I honor my internal experience and still hold myself accountable in this life's journey, which I actually already kind of talked about. How can I honor that my internal experience and still hold myself accountable in this life's journey? Understanding compassion and acceptance over condemnation or judgment. Okay. And that was that back and forth between accountability and negative self-talk. Okay. So I hope this was helpful, y'all. How to build self-worth. Number 1 was gain an understanding of where your image of self-worth comes from and common criticisms. Number 2 was shift your self-criticism to self-compassion. Hello, welcome in. And then number 3 was actively set boundaries for yourself and a new standard for how you treat yourself based solely on your personal value. So I hope that was helpful. So affirmations. I have 5 affirmations to take away. today on your self-worth. Hey, how are you? How are you? We're just talking about self-worth today. Let me see here. Yeah, 5 affirmations here. The first one is I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So I feel like I've talked about this before, but when it comes to our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, they all affect each other, right? Yes, all is well. I hope all is well with you. Um, we talked about thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, right? And how they all affect each other, right? Our thoughts affect our emotions, which therefore affects our behaviors and actions, and vice versa. Our behaviors and actions affect our emotions, which also affect our thoughts. So, understanding that you have to prioritize your own internal influence, how you influence your thoughts, how you influence your emotions, and how you influence your behaviors. If you are if you're make a whole big magnet of all of these things connected and how they draw to each other, the more that we understand that and the more that we prioritize those things, and really understand not just what we're feeling but how we influence it with our thoughts, that's what's most crucial and important. So I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. You are your biggest influencer. Like, I know we talk about social media all the time and influencers and all of that, and a lot of people may influence you, right? But you are your biggest influencer. What you say to yourself is what influences the most. Okay. So understanding that and taking accepting that and also taking accountability for that is crucial to building your self-confidence or building your self-worth. The more that you understand and take time to think through how you're influencing you is key. Okay, so that was the first affirmation. I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Number 2, I keep the promises I make to myself because I am worthy of my own trust. I keep the promises I make to myself because I am worthy of my own trust. I keep the promises I make to myself because I am worthy of my own trust. So understanding that many times we don't trust ourselves and we don't feel like we are worthy, or we don't feel like we're deserving because we don't keep the promises that we've made to ourselves, right? I promise that I'm going to set boundaries in this certain area, right? And because we have a tough time keeping those boundaries or not surpassing those boundaries ourselves, we build a sense of mistrust for ourselves, right? So the more that we're able to make these promises that we make to ourselves, but then also very, very well hold ourselves accountable to those promises, the more that we'll be able to build our own self-confidence and build our own trust and build our own sense of self-worth and value within ourselves when we actually can trust ourselves. Sometimes we have a hard time with our confidence because we don't trust us. And because we don't trust us because of past experiences, things we've done, things we maybe impulses that we have. There are so many reasons as to why we may not be keeping promises. Honestly, I also try not to do all of these promises, right? Like, okay, tomorrow I promise I'm going to get up, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it never happens. And that's how we end up letting ourselves down, right? So even within those promises that we make to ourselves, making sure that we're able to practice compassion when we're not able to follow through. We're human. Okay. And it's a common human experience to have a thought of, I want to promise this to myself and then not be able to follow through. Right. So I'm not saying to not make these promises to yourselves or goals and things of that matter, but one, practice compassion. To be realistic about the goals that you're making. Like, don't say you're gonna get up at 6 a.m. if you know you're not. If you know you're not gonna get up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, don't do that. Like, I tell myself all the time, like, Debbie, you're not about to get up that early. So let's set a realistic goal. That's another thing too. Like, when we are giving these promises to ourselves, the promises are unrealistic. And because the promises are unrealistic and we fall through because they're unrealistic, then we beat ourselves up for it for months, weeks, years, because we made an unrealistic promise, right? A promise I may have made for myself is I'm going to cook for my kids every night. Every night my kids come home, they're going to have a hot meal that I cooked every night. Ain't realistic. Okay. I got too much stuff going on. All right. So I shouldn't feel bad if I got to go buy my kids Chick-fil-A 1 or 2 nights out of the week because I got a whole lot of stuff going on. Right. So it's not just about keeping the promises that we make to ourselves, but it's also about being realistic about those promises. And even in the realistic promises, if you don't meet that need, showing ourselves compassion, and not beating ourselves up about the promise. Okay. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. That was affirmation number 2. That was affirmation number 2. Affirmation number 3, I choose to love myself and extend patience, kindness, and honesty. I choose to love myself and extend patience, kindness, and honesty. I choose to love myself and extend patience, kindness, and honesty. So understanding that love is a choice, okay? It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's a choice. And just like we choose the people that we love, we also can choose to love ourselves, right? We can love ourselves through patience, through compassion, through kindness, through honesty. Self-love is being honest with yourself. It's not lying to yourself, right? Just like you don't lie to other people or lie to the people that you love or be dishonest to the people that you love or cheat on the people that you love. You don't want to cheat on yourself. You don't want to be dishonest to yourself. You don't want to lie to yourself. Just like you don't want to be mean and surly to other people. You don't want to be mean and surly to yourself, right? Just like you don't want people to be impatient with you when they say that they love you. You don't want to be impatient with yourself, right? So thinking about love and what you expect love to look like from other people, and bring that internally. Okay. If I want patience in a relationship with someone I love, I want patience with myself. If I want kindness in a relationship with someone that I love, I want kindness for myself. If I want empathy, if I want compassion, if I want peace, if I want joy, if I want all of these things, right, in relationships with others, I also want those things within the relationship within myself. Okay. So I know we always think of love as externally, but it is an internal force. And the more that you're able to be patient with you, to be kind with you, to be honest with you, the more that you'll be able to be patient, kind, and honest with others. Right. And then again, it's a choice. It's not a feeling. So you may not feel like you love yourself right now. It may not feel good, right? It may not feel like you want, like you're patient or that you're kind with yourself right now. But guess what? You have a choice. It's a choice. And you can say that today. I choose to love myself. I choose to be patient with myself, even if I don't feel like it. Okay. So that's number 3. I choose to love myself and extend patience, kindness, and honesty. One thing I want you to take away from that is choose. It's a choice. It's not a feeling. You're not going to always feel lovey-dovey with you, right? Just like you don't always feel lovey-dovey with your partner. You don't always feel lovey-dovey with your family, or you may not always feel lovey-dovey with your children, but you still love them, right? Same with you. So it's a choice. That was number 3. Number 4, I understand my value and will not consume myself to feel worthy. I already am. I understand my value and will not consume myself to feel worthy. I already am. I understand my value and will not consume myself to feel worthy. I already am. Don't rely on the actions of others to determine your worth. You already are valuable. You already are worthy. So understand that. Take heed to that. Keep that in your heart, right? And don't consume yourself with the whether you feel worthy or not, right? You already have it. You're already there. You already have worth. So there shouldn't be any more, am I worthy? Am I not? No, you are. You already have that. So that's just a reminder. And then lastly, I am not too much. I am not asking for too much. I am deserving. I am not too much. I am not asking for too much. I am deserving. I am not too much. I am not asking for too much. I am deserving, right? Sometimes when it comes to common humanistic uh, things that we need, we feel like, or people gaslight us or help make us feel like we're asking for too much, right? It's not asking for too much for someone to be honest with me. It's not me asking for too much for someone to respect me. It's not me asking for too much if I have questions about someone's intentions. It's not me asking for too much if I feel like I'm wronged and I want to have a discussion or feel like I deserve an apology, right? That's not asking for too much. Sometimes we feel or we tell ourselves that it is because of our own feelings about our own self-worth, and because our own self worth is low, our own self esteem is low, we feel like even just asking a question or even just asking for common decency or respect is too much. Okay. So those common human needs, uh, it's not too much to ask, right? Shouldn't have to ask for honesty. I mean, that's the least you can do is be honest, right? Even if the honesty is going to hurt, the least you can do is tell me the truth, right? So keep that in mind. Now, don't be out here saying Debbie told me I'm not too much because I'm out here wilding. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to have the common human needs within relationships and within life. If you're asking that from someone, it's not too much. Okay. Um, so those are the affirmations. I'll go back to the top. Number 1 was I prioritize my internal influence on my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Number 2 is I keep the promises I make to myself because I am worthy of my own trust. Number 3, I choose to love myself and extend patience, kindness, and honesty. Number 4, I understand my value and will not consume myself to feel worthy. I already am. And then number 5, I am not too much. I am not asking for too much. I am deserving. Okay. I hope this was helpful, y'all. I hope that this has shed some light. The playback will be available on YouTube for those who are on Instagram, and it will be available in just a few minutes here. But I hope all is well. I hope this brought some insight to self-worth. Next week, I want to say the topic that was voted on was on avoidance, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what we'll talk about next week. If this is your first time and you have not signed up for the newsletter, make sure to go to haveninspired.com, sign up for the mindfulness newsletter. It will give you notifications and updates for all of the lives, information on mindfulness and our topics every week. And soon in September, I will be heading into my practicum for therapy. So I may be not be going live in that month because I'll be sitting with clients for the first time. Yay! But nerve-wracking, so I don't want to stress myself out. Okay. But I will most likely will still be posting, giving you guys updates and things, and then we'll follow up in the month thereafter. But I hope all is well. Y'all all have a great rest of your night, and I will see you next Monday. Bye. Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye, y'all.